All right. So we're back up and running, right? I wanted to, create a video that can get you some value out of preparing for certified Kubernetes specialist, right? After I've just finished this past week, right? A lot of different questions I get from the field, right? How are we essentially securing Kubernetes, right? And what type of tools do exist, right? So as you can see, I've already cloned our repo for the Aqua Security Kube-bench, which is definitely covered, right? So we'll take a look in that file, right? So we can see a couple things, right? So for this specific job to run, or this utility, it recommends for a quick start at least you can run as a Docker container. Another way is to run it as a job. That's kind of the quick way to do that, right? So um, let's take a quick look at that job. So let me clear my screen here, right? Run a quick ls. We see job.yaml is what we're looking for, right? So we can take a pick doing a cat, right? What view that looks like, right? So how Kube-bench is essentially going to work. It's going to look at our volume mounts, right? It's going to look at our kubelet, and you can see what it's doing, right? So this is essentially a read-only, right? So we're familiar with the scheduler, its purpose, along with a controller manager. We can also take a look at Etsy's controls as well, right? And then a little bit down here, what volumes it's going to also need access to, right? So we'll run this and we'll check out the output, right? So we'll run a kubectl, right? Apply dot job, and then we'll see that this is running, right? So, we'll do a generic um, get jobs, right? And then we can see the job saying 1 of 1, right? Let's see what we have as far as let's get pods now. Make sure our operations are running right. So you should see a Kube-bench, right? So you're going to see this output saying essentially Kube-bench 0 of 1 ready, right? And then this completed status. So now let's run a kubectl describe cube. Uh-oh. Got a little ahead of ourselves there, right? We'll run a Kube-bench J8DV8, right? And then I'll just, for flair, throw that namespace default. All right, uh-oh. I've missed a typo, it appears. Kube-bench J8. Oh, we didn't add our pod. These occasionally happen. Okay, so we can see essentially some of that same input from our file, right? So now let's clear that. And now let's, if you have any questions as well, right, I always go to the source of truth, right? So we definitely will look at the pods, right? So now we're going to look at the logs specifically, and that's going to give us our output that you kind of see here, right? All nice. So if you recall, just for reference, right, let's get that back. Okay, kubectl logs, then we'll run a Kube-bench J8DB8. Okay, so now we're, I wouldn't say bombarded, if you will, but we can see it's got a lot, right? Now, what does all this mean? How do you kind of work through this quickly, right? Given any type of remediation ongoing, how is this, read, right? So the good thing is it's pretty interactive. It will give you this output. In my terminal, I don't have my color schemes. I think you might be able to edit that. I haven't messed around with this in quite some time, but let's make this text bigger, right? So if you can see, you'll have, your worker node. You'll see some of these other areas covered here with that remediation. And it goes through even the steps for that specific remediation. Now, mind you, this is running on the back end of Kubeatom, right? There's some other configurations as far as EKS is concerned, but for the exam purposes, right, you'll be running on Kubeatom in the latest Kubernetes version, right? We're on 1.26. So some of these items might look a little different depending on your cluster setup, right? So as you can see, right, this will essentially break down its number being what its top line policies are, or not top line area of concern, and then it will give you either a warn or a fail output, right? So some of these are pretty straightforward, right? Where possible, remove, create access to pod objects, right? Pretty straightforward. Some of them are more uh, to the point, right? So let's get out of 5. It's not getting us too much here. But you'll see if using a kubelet config, right, what exactly you need to do, and then what are the actual flags to input in that specific service, right? Now, mind you, when you go create and fix some of these, right, protect kernel defaults, right, that's a pretty straightforward one. Um, or such as this number 4 here, you'll look up here and you'll even get the output of what it's looking at. So this is the worker node. So mind you, now we'd have to go to that worker node and fix that, right? Obviously, the larger the cluster, the surface itself, right? But one of the ways to quickly get up and running, right? Pretty straightforward. Now, a couple areas you're always going to want to um, understand, but also know where to find, right? So obviously we're already familiar with Kubernetes manifest, right? If you have any changes to your Kube API server at CD, any of the files, please take a copy prior to, and trust me, if you need to roll back, you'll thank yourself later. Typically, we're moving so fast when we're trying to complete any type of task, right? As we're trying to get more familiarized with the system. Um, this will just definitely ensure if any typos exist, any things like that. The Kube API server is very sensitive, right? Um, so at a high level, this is going to be one of those areas you'll operate out of. And then when we think of if we're going to do auditing, things like that, right? We'll likely have some type of files listed near our kube manifest, right? You can see here some of the config files as well, right? And then I can go to, a lot larger files such as Etsy in general, right? But we definitely want to keep that knowledge as far as where to go, how to fix things, right? Because things will go wrong, and when they do, that's the important part about security, right? It's ongoing, but also how are we going to remediate it? But we also need to understand the underlying Kubernetes system as well, right? So hopefully you found this helpful. Check out Kube-bench, right? Aqua Security is pretty big in this space. It's definitely a quick area to understand, get up and running, get familiarized, right? And it's only going to benefit you as you're studying for CKS, but also in your day-to-day, because CIS benchmarks are very important, straight to the point, or what I call quick wins, if you will, from a configuration standpoint. This is one of the tools. We'll be exploring other tools in the coming series of these